Hey everyone, Elias here. Wanted to have a coach's chat specifically for those who have a long time training martial arts, around a decade or more. And talking about personal responsibility. We're real big at Foundation with our world-facing politics and even on the mats, the way we try to set things up and acknowledging and in many ways centering structural analyses, right? We all know, no matter who we are, especially some more than others, there are structural barriers, structural impediments that make a lot of things harder in life. And that can come down to even training, right? Costs, distance, physical capabilities, stress, family situation. All these things can play a big role in your training. The environment can as well, right? And we try to take these things into account. We have family scholarships, we have air purifiers in events, we have air purifiers outside because we have, bad air quality in Chicago. We try to take these things into account as much as we can as an organization. Ultimately, taking responsibility, personal responsibility, isn't about ignoring the fact that the world sets up opportunities and many obstacles for our development in many ways, but let's talk about martial arts development. It's just understanding that it does that for everyone, and that we have to, understanding that, especially when we understand that, account for and take control of what we can control to the extent that we can control it. Our personal effort, our efficiency, our consistency, to the extent that we can control it, because there's so many barriers that life and the world throws at us, we have to prioritize the things which we can control. So, the conversation today is really about those with around a decade or more, years of hard training in the martial arts, learning under others, and about taking responsibility for your learning. Now, you can and you should join gyms, communities, learning environments, learning communities where you feel you can learn, where you feel it fosters learning, where you can learn from others, where you can learn in large part because the environment is encouraging, safe, creative, generative, right? You should choose, to the extent you can, good places that help facilitate your learning. But they're facilitating your learning, and you, especially if you had a decade or more of training, you need to take responsibility for your learning. Why? Because at this point, you should have already learned how to learn. And if you haven't, it's a really good time to start doing that. The best martial artists, the best learners of any type, really, don't simply view themselves as empty vessels to be filled by experts or gurus or masters. Not only is that a poor way to develop one's own critical thinking skills, one's own research capabilities, one's own habits, it also opens up to a lot of a room for abuse, right? This type of attitude, this type of dependence on masters or so-called leaders, it doesn't help you as a learner, but it also is behind a lot of the reasons why these leaders can abuse in the martial arts community. And this obviously goes outside the martial arts community as well. But it's really important to learn how to learn, right? If you feel you're in a rut and you've got around a decade or more of training experience, take stock of what you're doing, right? Don't have me tell you what you should be doing, because you've got to determine what your goals are based on whatever criteria you have, right? If you are happy training once a week, once a month, twice a year, and that fulfills you and adds something positive to your life, good, do that. If you train once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and you really aren't satisfied with that alone, you want to win fights, you want to win matches, well, I think you need to take a serious look at the effort you're putting in. Not only the days you're training, but how much studying you're doing, how much reading you're doing. How much footage, match footage, instructional footage on the team YouTube page, for example, which we keep pretty robust, if I say so myself, with matches, fights, technical demonstrations, analyses of matches and fights, interviews with top fighters in the world and top coaches, clips and instructionals from some of those same experts who've come in and do seminars, as well as utilizing the rest of the internet. How much studying are you doing? How many hours of studying are you doing a week of the sport you are saying you want to get better in, right? How often are you competing in the sport you're claiming you want to get better in? Competition, especially when you're advanced, especially when you have a decade or more of experience training, is absolutely crucial for your learning. You are no longer nervous in your home academy if it's a healthy environment like Foundation. You need to test yourself with other people. You need to collect data. You need to see how you react under duress. You need to prepare for things in advance. How intentional are you about your practice and your studying? How intentional are you about your drilling, about your rolling? Are you thinking about, are you aware of what you need to work on because it's a weakness? Are you aware of things that you don't know? Oh my gosh, I saw this thing. What is that? I search more. I find out it's this. I look up videos. I ask my coach about it. I ask my teammates to help me drill this a little bit more. I experiment. We need to use this experimental method, the scientific method. John Dewey, a great American philosopher who wrote a lot about critical thinking and education, pedagogy. He put those together, experimental thinking and scientific method. We need to put time in. We need to use our experience and repetitions and study and combine them to make some generalizable statements, to have some goals, to have some ability to meet the goals, right? So how much studying are you doing? How many days are you training? What do your training sessions look like? Are you just doing what coaches say? If you're a coach yourself, how are you designing this? Are you looking at the videos your coaches are sending you? Are you studying more deeply the things your coaches suggest you work on? Are you really thinking about what you bring to bear with variations for these techniques? Are you observing the way your students are practicing and thinking around the problems you see and helping them solve it? How many rounds of sparring are you doing? A lot of times as a coach, if you're an experienced martial artist, you might be a coach, you have to watch out for others, right? So in a sense, you take a back seat during class, right? You need to make up that gap somewhere else if you have competition goals. Get roles afterwards. Keep people before, have them come in before, have them come in afterwards. They'll do it. They'll do it for you. They'll be so happy to train extra with their coach, right? How much drilling are you doing of certain positions in addition to rolling? Are you coming in and doing basic things over and over and over and over and over for hundreds of reps, right? At home, are you doing that? Are you doing that during class? The ways in which coaches can center themselves is that you have a large, if not total, kind of type of latitude for deciding what happens in class. Decide what will help you in your game. Teach that and teach that to your students, design classes to do that. They'll only benefit as well. Take some control over what you can take control of. Take some responsibility over that. If you're a coach and you're coaching a couple times a week, are you taking your colleagues' classes all the time? If not, that doesn't make you bad. But if you have competition goals, you need to train a lot. You need to train smart. You need to study. You need to do conditioning outside of it. You need to ask questions. You need to compete a lot. So, take responsibility for your own learning. If you have years and years and years, decade plus of training, you are no longer, if you ever were, an empty vessel simply waiting for a master to pour in knowledge like a liquid into you. If you take that approach, you'll still learn. You'll learn by osmosis, but your learning will never be truly customized. You'll never develop an inner drive that will make you a good competitor anyway. You need to take responsibility for yourself and your own learning. And I'll tell you what, it's a really fun process. It can be really scary, but it's a really fun process. When we opened up Foundation Chicago, I myself, if you want to say I was a belt, I guess I was a purple belt. I hadn't gotten ranked for over a decade. when we opened up the school, because we had confidence that we had something to offer the world in terms of our pedagogy, in terms of our values. And I had been helping others fight as a kind of an assistant proxy coach just by default, because after I started fighting MMA, I didn't want my teammates who were starting to fight MMA to be left out on their own, to devise their own structure, their own camp, like I largely had to do. So I started helping with that. And I felt, you know what, I want to train all sorts of people, whether or not they're fighters, in the same way that I help train my friends who are fighters, give them personal attention. And it was scary. I didn't have any rank that would justify in the eyes of the world my opening up a school with friends, but I had fight experience. I had confidence in that. I had a critical mind. I had confidence in that. I had been around for a decade and a half in the martial arts. I had confidence in what I had learned, what I had seen, not even what I could do, but what I had observed in others, what worked and what didn't work. Right? My other two partners at the time, Rami and Manny, also had fight experience. They also didn't have any jiu-jitsu rank to speak of, but they had confidence in how much they would care, how much work they would put in, what they had learned as athletes, and what they could do differently than what they had seen out there, right? Now, not that we're some great model, but I'll tell you what, my learning soared. When I started jiu-jitsu at 15 years old in 1999, and was just being like, given the stuff, you show up, you work hard, you do what you're told to do, skyrockets, right? Fast forward 8, 9, 10 years, to be honest with you, to no one's fault of my own, my learning had really stagnated, right? I just kept that model in my head of like, you know what, I show up, I have a coach that has good technique. I have coaches with good technique. I'll learn from what they're showing me. And to be honest with you, I stagnated in my learning in a lot of ways. Outside of MMA and designing my own camps and the learning I did from that, in my like component martial arts, I really stagnated. And you know, even though I had issues with some of the coaches that I ended up separating from, it wasn't their fault that I wasn't improving. I needed to study more on my own. Once I started more on my own, I learned about the things in which I hadn't been taught. I learned that there was a whole world of leg locks that really no one was teaching me. So the internet had come around. At this point, it wasn't 1999 anymore. It was widely available. And I started studying, and I experimented. I had a decade and a half actually, in the martial arts. I was perfectly capable of looking at a tape, thinking of it, asking a friend to start working on stuff. And then, you know, seeing how others do it. I was perfectly capable of that. And once I started doing that, leg locks became a big part of my game. I started winning matches with them. I started beating black belts with it, even though I didn't have that rank with it. I'm not some great success story. I'm just a normal guy that spent a lot of time and eventually took a little bit more responsibility for my training, right? If you do that, you'll feel good about yourself, you'll have confidence that's earned, and your learning will progress. It doesn't mean you don't seek out good coaches whose experience you respect, whose relationship is valuable to you, but you are no longer an empty vessel simply to be filled by some master after you're a grown-ass man or woman or whatever you identify as. If you have over a decade of martial arts experience, find a place that cares about you, that will pick up your call, answer your email, answer your text. When you compete, they'll wrap around you and try to get you structure so that you optimize your training. But your day-to-day learning is on you, even if you have the best instructors in the world. If you have particular goals and you have particular weaknesses and you have particular strengths, and that all of us fall into that category, you have to take responsibility for that, right? If you can't train every day, that's fine. Maybe you can do some conditioning extra. Maybe you can watch a little extra film. Maybe you can adjust your expectations for how good you're gonna be in competition. If you can't compete that often, that's okay. Adjust your expectations for how well you're gonna compete when you do compete. This is 2025. There's no secret knowledge, right? We all have access to it. If you're watching this on the internet, you have access to this. If you're someone with over a decade of experience and you're at a gym, you have access to this information. You have access to this stuff, right? You aren't going to beat someone who trains more than you, who trains smarter than you, who does more conditioning than you, who studies more tape than you. It's not going to happen. Doesn't make you a bad person, but don't get upset about it if and when it happens. I've been there plenty of times. I've gone into matches, into fights where I wasn't prepared. Didn't regret going into the match or the fight. The takeaway is, hey, I've got to take personal responsibility for myself. What more could I have done better? So take responsibility for your own learning. The most valuable things we can learn are not particular skills or particular moves or even principles about techniques. The most important thing we can do in learning is learn how to learn. Only you can do that for yourself.